Hello students and welcome. This is Mr. Panza as we continue our unit of study on measurement. This time we're going to be talking about the unit of measurement in the metric system that goes with weight. In the metric units for weight, we deal with two typical units: the gram, which is about the weight of a paperclip, and a kilogram, which is the weight of a pineapple. The nice thing about metric is you'll get used to hearing the same exact types of prefixes. So for example, whenever you hear kilo, whether it's gram, meter, or anything else, kilo is a little bit longer, a little bit heavier, a little bit more full of capacity. So in this case, the gram is a paperclip, and that is the smaller unit of measurement, and the kilogram is a bit heavier because that K-I-L-O will tell you that anything is a little bit longer, and in this case, a little bit heavier. So now with that information at hand, let's take a look at the questions below. What would be the best to measure the weight of each item? Let's start with an apple. Would you measure that in a gram or a kilogram? The answer in this case would be gram. That's because an apple is not too significantly heavy, and I wouldn't be comparing an apple to a pineapple. How about a horse? What would you measure the horse in? A gram or a kilogram? As I had mentioned before, the kilogram weighs things that are a little bit heavier. Well, in this case, a horse can be pretty heavy, so I'd go with the kilogram. Now let's move down to the bowling ball. Would you measure that in a gram or a kilogram? Once again, we're talking about a heavier unit. So in the metric system, we use kilograms to measure things or weigh things that are a little bit heavier. And finally, a rubber band. Would you use a gram or a kilogram to weigh the rubber band? In this case, because the rubber band is roughly about the same weight as a paperclip, you should recognize that I would use a gram to measure the rubber band. For a little bit more practice on measuring metric units of mass, we're going to do some more practice using this slideshow right here. A couple of more pieces of information. We talked about grams and kilograms. So again, if a gram is about the weight of a paperclip and a kilogram is a little bit larger than that, then we can fit about 1,000 paperclips into 1 kilogram. That shows you that the kilogram is certainly much heavier because it would take 1,000 paperclips or 1,000 grams to equal a kilogram. You could even get into milligrams and grams. Now, we won't talk too much about that, but milligram is something that's even smaller. And that's the nice thing about the metric system. MILLI is always going to be equal to 1,000, which is a small amount. In fact, your mini amount, mini milligram. 1,000 milligrams equals 1 paperclip. So that would be 1,000,000 or 1,000 little pieces inside 1 paperclip. So now that we have that piece of information, let's see if we can apply it to some questions. If I have a fish, a pencil, a balloon, a bicycle, a dime, and a pear, what would be the most appropriate unit of measurement when it comes to weight in the metric system? Let's start with a fish. The fish, would that be A, 30 milligrams, or B, 30 grams? Now, keep in mind that when I'm talking about a fish, I'm talking about something that's not too heavy, but that isn't too light either. So in this case, which would you choose? In this case, because the milligram is so small, I would choose B, 30 grams. That would be the most reasonable unit of weight measurement that I would use to weigh the fish. When we're talking about a pencil, which would you choose? A, 15 grams, or B, 15 kilograms? Again, a kilogram typically weighs things that are a bit heavier. How do I know that? Whenever I hear that word kilo in the metric system, I think of things that are longer or weigh more or can fill more capacity. So in this case, which would you choose for the pencil? In my case, I would choose 15 grams, especially because I can think about 15 paperclips and bouncing out with about 1 pencil. So your answer is A, 15 grams. How about the balloon? Are you talking about 1 milligram or 1 kilogram? I again would choose A, 1 milligram. A kilogram would weigh things that are a little bit more heavy, and in this case, a balloon is extremely light. 1 milligram would be about 1 paperclip. The bicycle, would that be A, 10 grams, or B, 10 kilograms? The answer is B, 10 kilograms. Because the bike is a little bit heavier, you would certainly not want to take all of those paper clips to try and weigh it. Instead, use the larger unit of measurement in weight, which is kilograms. How about for the dime? Are we talking about 4 milligrams, A, or 4 kilograms, B? In this case, I would choose A, 4 milligrams. The dime is extremely light, and a kilogram is typically weighing things that are a bit heavier. So in this case, A, 4 milligrams or 4 paper clips would be about the same as 1 dime. Finally, my pair. Would I use 200 grams or 200 paper clips, or 200 kilograms to weigh the pair? In this case, that kind of goes back to a previous example when we talked about which would be the lower unit of measurement. I would go with the 200 kilograms in this case, I believe. B. Let's check our answers. So you can see, I got most right, except for my bottom one here. The 200 grams, which makes a little bit more sense when I'm thinking about it, and our dime here as well. The milligram would be way too light, so you would compare this dime to about 4 grams. So understand that understanding what the equal amount is in weight doesn't necessarily mean that you get them right all the time, but you do have to be thinking about the correct units of measurement in order to see if you understand our measurement unit. Thanks for stopping by. Hope this video helped.